And yeah, let's get into it. So as I said before, today we're talking about negotiation. Now, what we're going to talk about is certain techniques and skills and things that I've worked on and that I've used in my land investing business that I feel can be helpful for you as you start to find properties to invest in, as you want to kind of mitigate any risk for your investments, as you're trying to basically have your money go further, right? So let's think of it this way. When you start to invest your money, and let's think about the typical vehicles that most of us use, right? Most of us, we have a 401k at our jobs, or we jump into the stock market. And I'm not even talking about trying to be a day trader or anything like that. We're trying to just, hey, we hear a hot stock tip, or, you should invest in tech companies like FANG. So that's Facebook, Amazon. What was the other A? Facebook, Amazon, damn it, Netflix, Google. I'm missing an A, but whatever. You're starting to Apple. There it is. I knew I was gonna get it. Apple. You're starting to do different things, but you're like, well, this is okay, but I need something a little bit more. And maybe you don't have a lot of capital to actually start your investment journey, and you're looking for what you can do. Now, a lot of people, again, they get caught up and they get excited about property. Like, look, there's a property I think I can afford. I did the research. I'm going to go for it. You're talking to the owner, and guess what? They're like, well, I want more than what you're offering. And you're like, why? And they don't have a logical reason. All right. So let me tell you a story that kind of puts this all in perspective. All right. When I was actually doing a deal not that long ago, I was talking to an individual. And this individual was like, yeah, I do want to sell. And this is a burden. And the people, the county's going to take this property from me, but I still want top dollar. I'm paraphrasing, of course. And like, to me, it didn't make any sense. I'm like, well, I gave you a price range on the communication. Does that price range work for you? And they're like, no, I want more. I'm like, well, why did you call me? Why did you contact me if the amount that I was offering was below what you were willing to accept? Now, most people in that situation would just get frustrated, hang up the phone, and call it a day. But I knew if he's actually calling me, he actually wants something from me. He wants to get that money because he needs it. And he's probably doing his best to get as much as he can, the same way I'm doing my best to get it as low as possible. So I says this, I'm like, listen, I can only give you this amount because that's what the land is worth to me. Notice I didn't say that's what it's worth to me. Now, I can understand if you want more, but listen, if you know how to sell the property and you can get this property sold quickly, then you probably wouldn't be talking to me right now. You probably would be having it on the market. You'd be fielding callers from people trying to get your property at retail price, but you're not. You're talking to me. So what I have to offer is what I can give you. Now, I gave that right now in more of a direct way here for the live stream. I'm a lot more gentle on the phone, but that was pretty much the message. I'm like, look, you don't know how to sell this thing. After you get off the phone with me, no one's going to come by it, right? Even if you have, and this happens all the time, other people claiming they want the property and they're claiming to pay more. They don't understand, or they've seen it, where as soon as that other person gets them on the phone, they're like, okay, I did say I was going to pay you, I don't know, $4,000, but after looking at X, Y, and Z, I can give you $1,500, right? Not necessarily a bait and switch, but it does get people's hopes up, and then it kind of takes, kind of dashes them to pieces a little bit. And then so when I came out and was, hey, look, I'm a straight shooter. This is what I can offer. I mean, I may be able to go a little bit above my upper range, but not by much. Eventually, they're like, fine, let's do it. And that is what it is. All right. So for you to start getting the same type of investments, I want you guys to understand something. One, we're going to go over everything in detail. You got to know the actual assessment of the land, right? And I'll talk about that in a minute, right? Next, you got to make sure the person on the phone actually wants to sell and they're not just kind of seeing what their property is worth, like you're some kind of impromptu appraisal person. And third, understand what's going on with the property itself, right? So again, you got to know about the assessment of the land. So you got to know the area. You got to know the area. 2, make sure that the person you're talking to actually wants to sell. And 3, you got to know details about the property. All right, so let's jump into it. But before we do that, let's make sure we're good. You guys can hear me? You can see me? I should have asked that earlier. This technology stuff always gets me all confused. And it's funny, you would never know I have a background in software engineering with the way I get confused by this shit. That's probably why I get so damn frustrated. I'm like, it should be better than this. I would have made it better, you know, because I know everything in all things and I'm perfect. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Looks like we're all good to go. Perfect. All right. Hey, Lars, good to see you. I hope I can help you improve your business. Good to see you again, Matthew. Good. Okay, so first thing, let's get back to it. Make sure you get a good assessment of the land. So this is what you want to do. When you are investing in a property and you do your initial research, right? You're looking at properties where you feel once you acquire it, you can sell it for a certain price range. You know that the county is going to be favorable to work in. Maybe you make a phone call or two to the county just to make sure, hey, I'm looking at to buy a property here, and here. What are the building restrictions? If I were to build a house on it, what can I do? What can I not do? Can I, put my doomsday fortress on it? Can I, whatever it is, right? And then, you'll get the lay of the land. So you understand. Now, when you're doing that research, you're going to understand how much people have actually paid for property within that, comps, comparables. And unlike housing, most people do housing for like the last 30 days, 90 days, maybe 6 months for certain markets. But in general, what we do as land investors, at least what I do, I go about 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, because land doesn't necessarily move as quickly and things doesn't change that fast when it comes to land. So I go back and I can kind of start to see what's going on. And again, since I looked at the market value, I kind of get an idea, okay, this is what the property or people are asking for. Now, here's the thing, just because someone's asking for a price doesn't mean they're going to get it. A lot of times, and you got to know who's actually listing the property. A lot of times, real estate agents, they'll overinflate that value and their asking price, knowing that things are going to get talked down or hoping that they can actually get a higher commission. Nothing wrong with them. I ain't gonna knock the hustle. I do similar tactics, so it ain't nothing wrong. But I understand we may have similar tactics on pricing, but they don't have my skills to sell, nor do they have the interest to sell land when they have houses that give them a much higher commission. And it's a lot more, I don't want to say straightforward, but it's easier for the prospect to actually understand the value of a house because they can see it. They're going to move into it. They're going to use a rental property or whatever. All right. So with that said, you understand the area, you understand the little subdivision, you understand a little bit of the lot. When you finally get on the phone with that person who's like, yeah, I'm looking to sell, you have an idea like, okay, if I buy a property, I cannot go over this amount. Why? Because if you go over a certain amount, then that cuts into your margins. And now your investment is diminished. You're going to get a smaller return on investment. And a lot of times the way you do that happens because you don't have the balls to just be bold in what you're wanting. It's okay that the other person says no. It's okay that what you thought you were getting into isn't what's actually happening, and you see that early on and you're pulling yourself out. That's what a smart investor does. What a bad investor does is get emotional. They become afraid. They make decisions based on emotion. They make decisions based on scarcity. They make decisions based on fear. And when you do that, guess what? That's when you start overpaying for property. Or you don't realize that you're a little bit too low and you were able to safely bump your offer up and still be very profitable. And I see it all the time. Emotions run everything. That's how we are as human. Studies show that there's certain people who've had certain brain injuries. And with that brain injury, they lose a lot of their emotional output. And because of that, they're only based on logic. They can't make any decisions. Like we do make decisions on emotion. So I'm not going to make it sound like there's no emotion involved. However, the amount of emotion that we actually, as people, put into these investment decisions is way too much. So you need some kind of rubric. You got to be firm with yourself. You got to be strict. And knowing that when you're coming into negotiation is going to help you go much further. Because if I feel as a person, like this person's about to crack, I can get more from this person. Well, then guess what? I'm going to do everything I can to twist that knife and make sure I get as much as I can from you. So I walk away from the deal. Because another thing I've learned, people want to always feel like they've benefited from the deal. even if the other person involved in that deal loses. A lot of people do think it's a zero-sum game, and that's not necessarily true. We can have a lot of win-win situations, but either way, a lot of us are programmed to try to, get more out of the deal than the other person, so they feel like it's worth it, that it's valuable. Hell, that's why a lot of people, when they go and they hear about Black Friday sales, they go absolutely apeshit, because that off-brand TV is now $30 as opposed to 50, but they feel like they're getting over on somebody. Yeah, somebody bought this TV a month ago for $50. Now I'm getting it for 30. I win. All right. So knowing what you want to pay, understanding the lot, understanding the area before you go into the negotiation. All right. Now, the next thing that we want to talk about is making sure the person on the phone actually wants to sell. Now, the first thing I do when I'm actually on the phone with somebody, I say, hey, thanks for calling me back. I have your property information here. Just real quick, I just want to make sure that the price range that I put on the card, does that work for you? Now, if they say no, then I'm like, well, why are we on the phone? Right? Again, I know that they want to sell, but they're hoping that we can negotiate. Now, side note, there are times where, let's say my price range is 500 to 1,000, and they want to sell for about 1,500. That's not such a wide gap where I'm like, this person's high on crack. It's something that's reasonable. Now, will I pay 1,500? Probably not. But what can I do to get them closer to my price range? Again, you got to be very firm with your price. But for me personally, and knowing certain areas, I know a difference of $200, especially if they don't owe any back taxes, and looking at the title chain, it's very simple and straightforward. It's okay. I'm like, all right, I'll bite this, but this is going to be an easier transaction. So I may make less down the line, but it's not going to be significantly less. And the actual ease of the process is going to make up for maybe throwing an extra couple $100 in a deal. So number one, make sure that they want to sell. Now, again, if you say your price range between 500 and 1,000, and they're like, hey, I want to sell for 20,000. Yeah, you're far apart. There's nothing you can do. Just walk away from that, bid them good day, and put in your notes, contact this person in 6 months, and I know they're going to want to sell this property. All right. Now, what else can you understand if they're going to want to sell? Number one, do you know how much do they owe in back taxes? Do you understand how much they owe in HOA fees? Do you understand if there's pressure from the city or the county for them to mow the lawn or to remove any debris on the property, or there's neighbors that they just don't want to deal with anymore, right? Because maybe it's not them, but the neighbors have these issues. Maybe this person tried to list that property in the market and no one bought it. And now they're like, well, damn, what do I do? Right? They came out thinking they had a great piece of property. They hired a real estate agent. That agent couldn't help them sell. So now they're like, well, what do I do? Well, knowing these things in advance, that helps they do want to sell. And understanding that will help like, hey, do I dig deeper? Or do I actually have to just pull the cord and just jump jump out? So understanding if they want to sell is going to be a big deal. Because again, if they don't want to sell, if they just think you're a walking appraisal machine, and they're just trying to see how much they can get, and they have no interest in selling, it's a waste of your time. It's a waste of your time. So don't waste your time. All right. So now let's get into the nitty gritty. So now we're going to talk about the lot itself. What about it? What can you say about it? Or what can they say about it that is going to help you negotiate the lower price? Now, this is what I like to do. A lot of times people don't understand vacant land. They don't understand real estate in general, right? And even people who are like real estate agents and things like that, they understand some, but they don't understand as much as you as a land investing expert. Now, the first thing I would do, especially to a traditional landowner, not necessarily an agent or anything like that. Hey, okay, the price range work for you? Can I ask you a couple of questions about the property just to make sure we're on the same page? And like, oh yeah, sure, of course. And this is when I ask, like, hey, do you know if your property's in an HOA? Now, sometimes that information is easy to find. And I know if they say, I don't know, you have something. Why? Because a lot of times when the property is part of an HOA and they don't understand that, they probably have dues that haven't paid. And that can be a great bargaining chip to help them lower the price. In fact, I had a property that I bought it was about a year ago from now. The HOA fees were high, and this HOA was very quick to put a lien on the property. So I initially approached him to buy his two properties for about like, I don't know, 1,100 each. After all the negotiation, I ended up getting them for 200 each because he owed so much HOA and he owed some back taxes. Next, well, I guess with the long on that HOA front, if they do know, like, hey, do you know if you owe? Sometimes it like they know a lot of times exactly, but they'll act like, it's probably just a couple of $100, not much, right? Find out, right? But just like, okay, good. All right, well, a couple $100. In your mind, you're mentally taking points away from the grade of that land. So you come into the phone call, it's an A, right? They say, oh, I owe some little HOA fees and maybe even back taxes. Usually they owe one, they probably owe both. Then now it's at a B plus or a B, maybe even at a B minus, depending on the amount that they owe, right? Then you ask questions about, hey, so do you know about if it's had a survey done recently? And 100% of the time, I've never had anybody that said, yes, I have one done recently. Most of them like, no, I haven't had one done since I bought the land in 1948 or 1977 or whatever it is, right? I knew that, but then I was like, oh, okay, not a survey, I'm gonna have to get that done. Okay, is your lot clear of any trees or had it been cleared at all so I can just start to build right away? No, it's been overrun by this and that. Like, oh, okay, interesting. And then I asked this, hey, how's the road to the lot? You know, will I get my vehicle stuck as I go view it? You know, is it full of mud? Is it sandy, that road? Is it overgrown where even though this technically should be a road there, there's nothing there? Like, I don't know. I haven't been there in many years. I'm like, oh, okay, well, interesting, right? Now, hopefully you understand what I'm doing. I am in their mind lowering the value of the property by letting them know, like, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that, it's this much of a pain in the ass, it's that much of a pain in the ass, right? So it's not like I'm just saying, here's a low ball offer because I think you're a jerk. I'm saying, hey, based on the decisions and the decisions, well, I guess the decisions, but the facts that you told me, this is what the property is worth, right? Is that making sense? Before I go on, I just want to make sure everybody's following me. We good? Oh, thanks, Jamel. Love you too, my Aunt Jamel. All right. Moving on. As we continue to ask questions about the property, about the features, about things like that, a lot of these lots have been neglected. A lot of these lots have never been developed. So you ask like, hey, is there power on the lot? Is there water? Is there gas? Is there a septic tank? And the answer, you know, is going to be no. It's going to be no for all these things. And again, you're letting them like, damn, I really needed that. I really wanted that. Or it's going to be harder to build on it. Okay, it's not a problem. I can deal. So then once you go through all the different questions, and a lot of these questions you won't know until you actually ask anyways, you can kind of do a recap, right? And the recap can be like, okay, well, okay, the lot is here. The road to get there is kind of rough. It's going to be hard to get there and they're overgrown. The lot hasn't been surveyed, so I'll have to do that. There's no power or water on the lot, so I have to check into that. It seems that, you know, the lot has not been cleared, so I have to clear before I can build. Perhaps they have like an old RV or a trailer, a bunch of trash on their lot, or maybe the neighbor dumped trash on their lot. It's like, okay, I'm gonna have to deal with that. I'm like, all right, well, depending, you know, hearing that, this is what I can offer you for your property, and I'll take care of everything. And depending on how you do this and where you started from initially, this usually goes very well. Now, here's the thing. Let's just say you said your price range is between 500 and 1,000, and you hear all this stuff, and then it takes you down to like 200. Sometimes that's tough because now they're getting below what they even thought they can get. And sometimes they're working uphill to try to get them to agree. Sometimes that's exactly what it is. You may find something that you didn't realize before, and that's like, okay, I really can't offer you anything more than that. And you got to stick with your guns. So just understand that. Now, this is when the negotiation part comes in, because there's times when people have sentimental value to the land. And when they have that sentimental value to the land, you're going to have to kind of work with them. Now, what a mistake I see a lot of people make is that they try to logically convince them that this is the best move. As I said before, people don't make decisions based on logic. They base their decisions on emotion, and they use logic to justify their emotional decision as if they did make it on logic. So I had a conversation with the lady earlier, or it was like last year, and then the people in my investment group, I actually recorded this conversation so they can hear it. and understand the psychology I've used to help her kind of get over it. She was telling me like, yeah, this property was left to me by my dad and my mom, who've been long dead, right? I mean, this lady's already 70 or 80 herself, so her parents are long gone. But she's talking about the memories they had, and she was hoping her children would take it, but none of the children wanted it. She's tired of paying taxes, but then I was like, damn, I should really get more for it. I really feel it's worth more. And then so instead of saying, well, why do you feel? I'm like, well, what's holding you up? I mean, put money aside. What's holding you up about really selling the property? And then for her, it had nothing to do with the value or the offer I was giving. For this lady, it was because she felt she was letting down her family by not keeping the property, not building on it, not using it for whatever reason. And because of that, it was very tough for her to let it go. So how did I get past that? Well, I'm glad you asked, Kimosabi. What I did was I walked her through her two sides of it, right? One side wanted to sell because she was tired of it, and her kids didn't want the other side, the parent thing. So I'm like, well, what will happen if you did sell to me? All right, what happens? And then she's like, well, I don't got to worry about paying taxes on it anymore. It's been a burden to me, so I don't got to worry about that anymore. It seems like you're going to do something nice with it, so I kind of feel good about that. My brother's already selling his lots that are next to mine. It just kind of makes sense. I'm like, right. And what would happen if you were to keep it, right? Like, are you going to build on it? No, I'm not going to build on it. I'm too old. I'm never going to use it. I'm like, well, are your kids going to use it? No, as I said, they didn't want it. So I'm like, so I say, okay, well, with that said, where do you want to go from here? And she's like, yeah, okay, I'll sell it. I know you're getting a good deal. And for my next property, I'm not going to give you such a good deal, but I'll sell it. I'm like, you know what? I appreciate that. I'm going to make sure I make this easy and as quick as possible for you. So, I like to pay up front. So I'm going to send you a cashier's check, a bank with Chase, so you can have that check before you do anything. You can cash it. You can do whatever you need. And then make sure that, the money is in your deposit, in your account. But all I'm going to need from you is just a notarized signature, and just drop that, the paperwork into the return envelope I provide for you. And you put that in any USPS mailbox, and you're going to be done. And I'll take care of everything else. The survey, the clearing, and all that. And she was like, okay. And that was it. Now that phone call took about 15 minutes or so, maybe 20 minutes. And because of that negotiation process, I got a property for $375. Sold it for about 10 times that. So about $3,500, $3,500. But that's the power of negotiation. The main thing is being prepared, right? Understanding what you're dealing with, actually having a little bit of information up front about the property that the person called you about or replied to your communication about. So you can see pictures of it on Google Maps, see if they owe taxes, and see if they understand if they owe taxes in HOA, and have them understand, look, the property is not as worth as much as you think it is. Now, how well does that work in places where the property values are just skyrocketing? It's tough, because now no matter what you say, whether it's true or not, they see people selling property for a lot more than what they should go for. So they're thinking they're entitled to that. And technically they are. That's what the market's saying right now. People are paying that. So it is what it is. But that's why I'll always avoid going to places that are super hot and where people are just throwing money at land, because it gives a false sense of inflation, not inflation, of, I don't know what the word I'm thinking about, but it makes people think their land is worth much more than it is. So every time I do research, I'm looking at, okay, is there a bunch of people in this area looking to buy land or not? There's not, only a couple of us, great, I'm good to go, because I know I can outwork them. If there's 50 people in there and they're all throwing money at the problem, or they're pretending to throw money at it and it makes people think something else is going to happen, then that's a problem. But the better you get with your marketing and just keeping up with people, the better it's going to be when it's going to be when you're actually putting offers out there. Okay, so with that said, any questions? Well, what I presented, because I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here, because negotiation part is very important. As I said, if you're not doing this right, you're going to overpay for property. That's going to cut into your margins, and at sometimes it's going to make it even more difficult for you to sell the property at the price that you need for this to be worth your while. This is why a lot of people hold on to property for a long time. They overpaid for it. So that means they have no wiggle room on the price when they're selling. And then they're wondering why, well, shit, why do I have this property for 8 months? Why do I have this property for 10 months? Because you can't sell it for the price that people are willing to pay, because you overpaid for it and you're so worried about this, you're so worried about that. But if you get something for cheap and somebody comes to you, and let's say you're selling, you got a lot for $375 and you're selling it for 5,000, like, look, I'll give you 3,500. You'll take it. Like, all right, cool. 10x my money. Just about 10x my money. You know, you got MasterCard, Visa, you want to do PayPal. How you want to do this? And you move it. You get that fast sale. And now that $375, you just transformed it into 3,500 minus your expenses, but you get the idea. Okay. All right. So now here's the thing. Sometimes you need practice with the negotiation process. And I understand that. So listen, if you want help with your negotiation skills, you want to run through something with me or just talk to me about more techniques about my negotiation, go ahead and put in the comments, negotiate below. I will personally reach out to you. I will let you know how, I can help you with your negotiation skills. I can help you understand what things are important to focus on and what things you're probably hung up on. And just to help you get past that so you can get that first deal. Because listen, it's a holiday season. People want money so they can buy Christmas presents for their babies. And you paying for land that they're not going to use is a great way for them to get money. All right. So this is going to be a great time to acquire property, and it's going to be a great time to sell because people are looking for Christmas presents and they want to get property, or they want to get property. So they have big plans for 2022 that they're not going to follow up with, but they will at least pretend that they're going to follow up with it. So this is the time. All right. So again, if you need help with your negotiating, just put in the comments, negotiate. I will reach out to you personally. I will help you with your negotiation, whatever it is. We'll book a call, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it takes. And yeah, hopefully I can help you get your next property or your first property and get it for a price that's going to make you very profitable when you sell. All right, that's it. Coach Vic, I'm signing out. I appreciate you guys being here. Hopefully you guys learned something. And yeah, if you have any questions, you guys know what to do. Make a question, post in the group. I'm on top of this. I'll always answer your questions. And if not me, other people in the group who love to give. All right, that's it for me. Peace.